We're going to be talking relationships now, and we're talking about the question is, should you compromise your happiness for your relationship? So sometimes people are in a relationship, and for the sake of the relationship, they're not happy. But you're there because at least I can say I'm in a relationship. I've been joined by Kobina Ankomah-Graham, who is a lecturer, a writer, and a DJ. He's going to help us to break it down. Good morning, Kobe.
Hi, Kwaku.
How are you?
I'm not bad.
Fantastic. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in ages.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw you was maybe on Ashesi campus.
Yes.
Yeah, a while ago.
That's a while ago.
Yeah.
That's a while ago.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. So, happiness vis-a-vis the relationship. In your experience, how often does that happen, that you find people staying in a relationship regardless of the fact that they've not been happy for a while?
I think it happens everywhere. I can think of some people that I know personally who I'm not going to put on blast. And then I can also think of a lot of people, just our parents. Some of us are parents who find themselves trapped in these relationships, specifically the relationship of marriage.
Okay.
And you make a lot of sacrifices, and somewhere in the middle you lose yourself. It's not exclusively our parents, just a lot of people. So yeah, it's very common and unfortunate. Yeah.
So should we jump ship just because we're not feeling happy?
I think it depends on the relationship, which ship you're trying to jump from.
Okay.
I think, for example, if you've not made any kind of lifelong commitment to somebody and they're really impinging on your happiness, then maybe you need to think about abandoning ship.
Okay.
But often the reasons why people stay are because they now have ties that bind them. So it could be kids, it could be other things. But if you don't have those things, then you really have to think about it. But I think a lot of it boils down to self-knowledge.
Okay.
I think part of the problem is we don't take the time to actually really get to know ourselves before we commit to these really epic relationships.
Yeah.
And so then you find yourself somewhere in the middle of it. And then what do? So should you abandon ship? It really depends. It really depends on the particular relationship that you're in. Yeah.
Now, we'll come back and talk about that extreme commitment and at what point do you abandon ship? Okay, but let me just paint a picture for us. About 20 years ago, I was in a space. I was on campus as a student. There was, of course, I've given away my age, isn't it?
Not yet, too.
Well, of course, you can be on campus at any time, right? So anyway, now, there was a lady on campus who was very popular, right? And she found herself in a relationship. And there was a lot of hue and cry on campus at the time because many people increasingly got to know that she was actually being battered physically, okay, in the relationship by her boyfriend. This lady will not leave the relationship. She just wouldn't.
Yeah.
Everybody talked. Walk away, leave him, dump him. This lady would just not walk away. What is it that makes people choose those paths?
Oof, that's a big one. These things are always complicated, clearly. And in this particular case, the person has been, like, I'm sure they're friends, a lot of concerned people would have spoken to them several times. So obviously there's something that's keeping them there. I think it can be a combination of things. On the one hand, it could be to do, remember what I was saying about knowing yourself.
Yeah.
It could be to do with a certain level of confidence and self-esteem. It could be to do with that particular person and some kind of power that they wield over them.
Okay.
We do live in a world where people can have, I guess, sociopathic tendencies, where they really work on a person and really actively try and alienate them from other people so that you become dependent on that particular person.
Alone.
So sometimes when you see that situation, you mustn't just presume that the person is staying because they're a fool. It can be so many there can be so many extenuating circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also social pressure. Like in a country like our beloved Ghana, people, I mean, okay, it's not exclusive to Ghana, but people venerate relationships. And so it really depends on how much social standing, what you're benefiting from the relationship.
Yeah.
So some people will make what will seem like a really rational decision to just stay. Yeah.
It seems like a really rational decision to them.
It can be. I mean, it really depends on what you're weighing up.
Yeah.
If the person is in this relationship with someone who they really, really depend on in some kind of way, whether it's emotional, economic, etc. So they might weigh the things up and say, well, beats me up once in a while.
Yeah.
Ideally, they should just leave.
Okay.
But these things are always complex.
No, but I think that makes a lot of sense, though. I mean, you're talking about the fact that, in my view, I am dependent on this person. And what a small sacrifice to make for being dependent. I mean, if it's going to beat me up once in a while, I'll just take it.
Some people will
just
think about it that
like
way.
that,
yeah. But I think these kinds of things are also a process. And so sometimes, in fact, often you have to keep on working at the person, with the person, listening to them, just being there for them, and just bit by bit helping them to work their way out of it. Yeah. But I mean, that's a massive compromise. Violence is,
I know, right?
That's a compromise too far, maybe.
Okay, so let's look at the other relationship.
Okay.
Marriage.
Okay.
Right? You want your marriage to be successful. But you're not happy. At what point do you say, you know what? It's been real.
I'm out.
Peace out.
Of course, you're asking someone who's very young in their marriage.
Okay.
In fact, maybe I should be wondering why you guys called me. It's like, is there something that you've heard that you're calling me that I should be on the show?
We don't have any negative intentions.
Thank goodness.
So, yeah.
No, I mean, marriage is another one. Yeah, I mean, society holds it up as the ultimate.
Yeah.
But it's really like I was saying before. I think a message that we often receive is that in marriage you need to compromise. But yeah, there's definitely some kind of boundary that can be crossed where you're really sacrificing your happiness. I'm thinking of specific scenarios. I know one person who got married, and this is someone who intended to, conquer the world.
Yeah.
United Nations Secretary General type of aspirations.
Yeah.
And then at some point in time found that they had to put those things, those desires, those goals to one side to look after the children. Because, and this was a decision that person made out of the love of family and putting family first, and through a lot of discussion. I find that often in marriage in particular, it's women who have to do a lot of the compromising.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that is changing. I've been teaching now for close to a decade, and there's advice that I constantly give to particularly my female students, where I tell them that it's really important now that they are competing economically with men, to take full advantage of that. Leave university and don't just hop straight into marriage. Take some time to get to know yourself, to enjoy yourself. And in theory, what should happen is, in knowing yourself, you pair yourself off with someone who is more aligned with who you are, and then you compromise, in theory, less.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people are not in that scenario. And so you find, particularly if you're talking about marriage, you find women in particular being the ones who do a lot of the compromising. Yeah.
Okay. Let me sort of turn this thing a bit and see what we can do with it. a successful relationship. Okay, we're looking at compromising happiness for a successful relationship. Now, I guess based on your definition of success, is happiness not an integral component of the happiness, of the success of a relationship?
Yeah. I would definitely say so. I mean, life isn't just even keel.
No.
You have your rises and your dips, and in any relationship, you're going to have some negativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you have to make a constant decision, an active decision to choose certain things, to choose love. And love, in theory, should lead us to happiness. It should lead us to success, hopefully. And it's something that you have to actively work on. So what that means in this case, in terms of kind of success and happiness, I think you have to make a decision at a certain point where you realize that there's a lot more sadness than there is happiness. And you have to accommodate the fact that you're human. And there's only so much negativity that you can take. And so you find some people, their definition of success will be like monetary.
Okay.
So I'm earning all the money, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have to ask yourself, does that give you is that really what you want? Does it give you the freedom? Because freedom is just as important as all of these things as well. Especially for a Ghanaian who lives in a country where it's literally on the coat of arms, freedom and justice.
Yeah, well. So you said something that brings a question immediately to mind. When we're looking at the success of a relationship, right? It will be defined differently by everyone, and every couple.
Yeah.
Right. They will define their success differently. Now, here's the question: What is it? Is it also possible that someone is simply being a spoiled brat in the relationship, and because of that, they are claiming unhappiness when maybe it's a mindset adjustment that needs to happen for them to enjoy the relationship even more? You see, so then at what point do you encourage people to jump ship? Just, it's like, you know what, I've been unhappy the last 3 months, I'm not doing this thing anymore. But when in reality, maybe you're just a spoiled brat.
Okay, so
a grown-up spoiled brat.
So I look at this thing really interestingly because personally, I've been kind of raised between different cultures with very different approaches to things. So I was born in London. Okay. But by 8, they moved me to Ghana, not to Accra, to Cape Coast. Okay. So I was in A4, living with my grandma, going to university primary, learning my fanti and everything. Okay. Cool. So I noticed as I grew older and left Mfanspim, stopped gnashing. Okay. And actually started getting into relationships. Okay. One of the things that I remember is my dating life in London, because I went back for university. Okay. My dating life in London was very different from when I moved back to Ghana. Okay. By the time I moved to Ghana, I noticed that I had a younger brother, for example, who he'd been with his girlfriend, now wife. At that point, I think he'd been with her for 3-4 years, something like that. Okay. And I think my longest relationship at that point was maybe 1.5 years, 2 years. And so I used to look at my younger brother. I still do, to a large extent. I look at him as like, oh my God, like that stability. And I'm the firstborn. Okay. And so this was something that
Pressure.
The pressure was chow. But then as I stayed longer, because I moved back about 15 years ago, and as I stayed here, I realized that there's a lot of famanyame, there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. And so you find that there are people who, they're in long relationships, which is what society defines as a successful.
And it's expecting you to do,
But are they happy though? And so a lot of the relationships in terms of length were really lasting long. But then I find that my friends who I've left behind in the UK, for example, they have a lower threshold for nonsense.
Yeah.
And so the relationships tend to be shorter.
Okay.
And I think as someone who I traverse both worlds, I've spent a lot of time thinking about kind of how do you kind of find an in-between. I think for me personally, I just really, really took my time. And so there's this impression that people have that there's no pressure put on men when it comes to marriage. It's not true. Trust me. If you're in this Ghana here and you pass a certain age, I think it's way younger for women.
Yes.
But for us guys, I remember, I think, 26, 27. If you are not married, there are social consequences. You are seen as irresponsible, etc., etc. And there are consequences to that. And I think for me, in spite of that pressure, I decided I was going to wait until I was with someone who I had a certain level of compatibility with, a certain level of alignment with, and I wasn't going to compromise on that. And so I would date, and sometimes I'd have my heart broken, sometimes I'd break a heart. It is what it is. But eventually, I found someone who, as soon as I met this person, I knew the alignment was just insane. And we've been together a couple of years now. We have a child. And so far, I feel like I'm very young in this relationship, in this marriage, but I feel like...
You took the right step.
Exactly, and that alignment is a huge, huge part of the way in which we roll as a married couple. Yeah.
Wow. So, looking at the fact that we have societal pressure to conform, to be a certain way, some societies, which more and more Ghanaians are exposed to, by way of travel, by way of opportunities,
television,
by way of television, all of those things influence, right?
Yes.
And so we are also becoming less and less tolerant of nonsense, as it were. So yes, there is the Fama Nyame. So give everything to God.
Which has its value,
which has its place
in a certain context. Yeah.
So, at what point? And I think this would be a difficult one because it's more nuanced than anything.
It really is. I know where you're going, but I mean, I can't give you a straight answer because it's so subjective. It really depends on the two people involved, the particular situation, what is at stake. If I was to give guidelines, and I guess I find myself constantly speaking to students. Like I said, I've been teaching for close to a decade, different institutions. I'm now at Webster University, and I find myself having conversations with a lot of young couples in particular. Lots of former students. I just got back from a trip to Tamale where I met up with a former student who's teaching there. Before that, I went to Uganda, and I found that I have students who are there as well. It's crazy. And so I find myself constantly in a position of giving advice to young people. And sometimes I do find young people who are in these situations. And I always find almost consistently that it's a process. It's not you're going to have a conversation with somebody, and then all of a sudden, bam, the person's going to say, no. I need to end this immediately. It's always a process. And I say that as someone who's the child of a broken home. My parents separated when I was very, very young. But for whatever reason, I seem to have an understanding of what was going on, even though I was around 8. I think an aunt sat me down and talked me through what divorce and separation is and told me my parents are both good people. But they're just not happy together. And so I understood this by 8. I remember my mom didn't tell me about the divorce for maybe a year. And when she told me, I was like, why did it take you so long to tell me this? Let's go and celebrate. We had kebabs and coke. It was nice. Yeah, so I got this at a really young age. And I think, it just taught me that you can have two people who are good, but they're not necessarily compatible. And sometimes it takes people a long time to realize that they're not
figure it out.
compatible.
Yeah.
It can take the duration of an entire relationship. Then for you to now decide, do I want to leave? There are so many things to consider. If, for example, you're married and you don't have kids, a little easier.
Yeah.
But you have kids.
Then
the
it
kids
becomes more
aren't grown.
challenging.
It becomes more challenging.
Yeah.
And that's not the only situation.
Yeah.
So there's no definite thing. It's for each person. I mean, you gave an example of violence earlier.
Yes.
I think violence is an extreme, and like that needs to. No one should be in a relationship where violence is what makes them happy. A certain level of violence in particular, but it just really depends. But I think it's one of those things that you have to constantly be asking yourself this question. And yeah, but it's very hard to define a line. It's like, once it hits this point, dear Charlie, you forgot. It's hard to set that line.
Yeah. I think the question that I deliberately left till the end, but it's actually a question that probably sets the tone for the decision-making process, is knowing that happiness is largely circumstantial. How do you then define the happiness that you're looking for to know whether you should compromise this thing? You know, for a successful relationship.
It's definitely a case-by-case thing.
Yeah.
But I think you said it's largely circumstantial, but it's not completely circumstantial.
No, not completely.
Yeah, I think you can be intentional about it. And I think that there are some people who, they just have a higher threshold of, I guess, sacrifice. I don't think that thing is genetic. So people are going to say, oh, women have a higher threshold for sacrifice. No, that's because society has imposed it on women. But I do think that there are some people who are naturally inclined towards that. We talk about like love languages, and for some people, their love language is literally service. Right? So someone like that, I think the other person's happiness makes them a lot more happy. Than
and there's
would be
nothing
for
wrong
someone
with
else.
that.
There's nothing
because
wrong
that's the
with
way you are.
Yeah. But every single person has to measure their own threshold. And I think I keep coming back to it, but you have to have, and we all moving in this society where we're being bombarded with so much information. We really need to collectively, not even collectively, we need to each become more self-aware. Especially in an Africa where traditionally we come from a society where your being is essentially defined by society. And so we're under epic social pressure. But then for us today in this world, you have to kind of put the social pressure aside and really come to understand yourself, who you are. And that's a daily, hourly thing. And once you understand that, you know how to move.
All right. Thank you very much, Kobi. We've been speaking with Kobina Ankomah-Graham, who is a lecturer at the Webster University and also a writer and a DJ. We've been trying to answer the question, should you compromise your happiness for a successful relationship?
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share with all of your friends. This is Breakfast Daily on Citi TV.
Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10. Join us for breakfast daily, only on Citi TV.